All right, everyone. We're here, but for some reason my camera will not come up. So I'm going to try to troubleshoot it here really quick and see if I can make it happen to where we can see it, and somehow it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that really easily. Oh, there it is. Look at that. All right, so this is, yeah, this is awesome. So we are going to start with the idea of the DBATools config. So we talked about this a little bit a while ago, but we're going to do this only DBATools config. So I'll have to bring up my environment here and make sure we got that. Azure Data Studio, come on up. I was going to check to see if we had anybody who posted a question in PollGab. So let me check that really quick. But the reality is that, like I said last time, it's nice that we have questions, but it's not always going to be that easy to have a lot of questions yet until we get some content out there. So that's okay. We're gonna do something different there. We're gonna also, let's see if we can just make this camera a little smaller, basically. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. So let's just hide this here really quick, and let me grab this guy and put it down here. Yep, perfect. So we're going to do that. We don't need to be that big. Put that back. Perfect. Yeah, because we don't need to be that big in this picture here. We'll just do this so we're there. All right. So basically, DBATools config, there are no questions in PollGab, so we're good there. So that's fine. But what we're going to do here is we're going to just from scratch. It's a PowerShell file. And this is going to be one of the discovery sessions that I'm going to show you how I discover things that go on. We're going to do it in PowerShell 5.1. We could do it literally in the PowerShell extension that has 7. But we're going to do that another day for other purposes. So basically we have an import module, DBATools. And as we spoke about before, the reality of DBATools is now that there's 2.0. And so 2.0.4, 2.0.4.5, or 2.0.5 is coming out hopefully soon. And there's some things that I want in there, and they're coming. But right now we're going to use 2.0, which again has that side effect of using the Microsoft.data.sql client. And the idea of running a scenario where number one, it will post this little fun view at us, and I might have changed it, which we're going to show you how to do that. I changed it so we don't get that little printer type look out of there. And the other major thing here is that we're going to just do get DBATools config. Whoops, not changelog, config. And we're going to talk about these things. So this is the deep dive we're going to do, because I want to help you understand how they're used. Now, number one, the first thing you need to know about DBATools config is that there's a lot of options. Number two, there's a type of module. So it tells you where they're used. So in this case, assets, assets.sql build reference. The about that. We'll open it up in a browser. The browser comes up and says, oh, that's not where it is. So let's get that all out of there. I wonder why that's the case. There we go. Whoops. Let's do this. That's not a link. So anyway, that's not where we want to go. We basically want to get this so that we can see this build reference. So let's grab this build reference, and here's how you get it if you can't see it in that window, because this window is kind of small. So we're gonna do this guy here, and the full name is that guy, and we're gonna execute that. And we should be able to do this kind of thing. So let's copy and paste this. This is how you get a specific one instead of all of them, because I did get all of them. Dot value. Whoops. Do a parenthesis. So everything in parentheses get executes first, and then dot value outside the parenthesis gives me just the value. And this is the value. So in Azure Data Studio, it hasn't figured out in this window how to give you the ability to click on a whole thing. But here's the whole thing. So if I hold down Control and hit open, it will actually open up to this JSON file. And this JSON file says when it was last updated. So if I look at this guy, you'll see that it was last updated 6/15 of 2023. And here's my versions. 8.0, 8.0, 8.0, and then SP, all sorts of things in here. KB list for all these versions. Now we're going to get to 9 eventually, because 8 was a long runner, because we didn't get to 9 until 2005. So 5 years later, that's quite a way. So now we're at 9, and here's our build number. Here's my KB list. So this is just a place. Now, if that place changed, they could update it, which is great. And they could update that in the last thing, and it could be all happy. Let's see. Hello there. Oh, yeah. Hey, SQL Dev DBA. My chat window is not being very nice. Let me open it up again so I can see it in front of my face. The other one's on my other side of my face, and so I'm not quite watching it as close as I would be. Let's see. Here we go. Maybe. Well, anyway. Excited to try out your SQL bulk copy from last time. Have it saved for testing soon. Awesome. I love SQL bulk copy, and the things that we taught are going to be a lot more extensively used there, which is going to be fantastic. But basically, if this ever changes, we could update this DBATools config with set DBATools config, and so could the DBATools team. They could release one with a different option in your build reference. So we're going to go ahead and run this get DBATools again, because we want to see all the options to go deep dive into them. So I'll bet you didn't know that there was a assets here, so a SQL build reference to get them. That's kind of nice to have that. The next thing is going to be about availability groups. So there's a few options you can see. Availability groups.default.cluster-type, WSFC. So you shouldn't have to specify the WSFC when you create a new availability group, and the cluster type, it will default to this value. If you don't want it to be WSFC, you could put none, or you could do something else that would allow you to have that be a different option. Connection mode in secondary role. If you just wanted to have allow no connections, you don't have to specify this parameter when you create a new availability group, because it will default to this value because it's set it in DBATools config. And then on critical server error is the failure condition level default. Now, you can't really add a DBATools config. So let me explain how this works. So the DBATools config is really things that are in the modules that take advantage of these properties. But if you added a new one, how would DBATools even know about that? It wouldn't. So therefore, it's not really real to add your own. In the beginning, when I first heard of it, I thought, great, a config bucket. But DBATools is baked by the time I get it. So if I added a DBATools config, it wouldn't help me. So I learned very quickly that these are things that they've set up. Now, if I author my own module command and want to contribute to DBATools, I could put in my module or my group and then put my own configs and take advantage of them in my command to where I would get some benefit there. Now, the reason why I say that is because some of these are farther reaching than just availability groups and assets. They are further reaching because they can be. So think about tenant ID or client secret or things like thumbprint for certificates. You can actually set. Now, they're not set at all, right? You see no values there at all yet. So the value here is nothing, and you can set them, and the functions that talk to Azure and take advantage of these settings will take advantage of them if they're set. So that's really cool. Now, what we haven't said is how you deal with this. So let's pause here and go back to set-DBATools Config. And you have the full name, you have the module, you have the name, you have the value. Okay? So you have options to how you handle these things. And the reality is that you can also persist them. So let's go back here and let's just, for your edification, get-DBATools Config, and let's just get this one, the build reference. Because we want to see, remember that last time we talked that there is an option for seeing more than you think you see. Now, the reality is that there are more properties than what you saw. There's the full name, there's a type, there's a value, there's a safe value, there's an unchanged, initialized, false. I mean, all of these things are part of this DBATools config item. So we saw the three like this: full name, value, description. That's all we saw in this view. But remember, there's a lot more properties sitting on that than you think. The URL, this is the description, this is the handler, the validation, so that you can actually have a validator on your DBATools config. So when somebody sets it, it'll run this validator against it to make sure that it's a valid value, or DBATools will go to use it and it will blow chunks. Okay, not a good idea. So they have their own validators in there to make sure you're not putting things in there that you really shouldn't put in there, because it would be silly. And then the last, hidden, you can hide them, policy set, simple export, module export. So you have a lot more functions or things that you can do, and the best way to find out what you can do is to go to dbatools.io, hit the docs page, and do set-dbatools config, and look at what you can do, right? So it'll tell you what these handlers and all these validations and all these things are. It won't give you details by virtue if the author didn't put them in there. So full name, persisted value. They don't look like they have any commentary about these parameters in them. The best you can do is see an example, and it just basically says updates the configuration entry for path.dbatools data to blah. Okay. If that's not enough, you can do get-dbatools config. So we could go up here and do get-dbatools config to see if there's any more there. And really, their full name is pretty much what you can do. You can do name and module, but full name is, these are two parameter sets. You can take your pick. There's a couple of examples, mail.io, force, and there's not much explanation other than search configuration by module, the name of the configuration elements, and search configurations by full name. So not a whole lot there for that, but you get an idea of what they're for by using them. All right, so we'll just go back. So set really does allow you to do all of these things. So it allows you to set the handler, set hidden, set your validation, your description. So you can change certain things in there that will help you validate the things. The only thing I would tell you is that you'll want to make sure that you test these in your real environment. Now test them in a dev environment so you don't blow something up. But make sure you understand what each one of these does for you to make sure that you can take full advantage of them, because they are baked into commands by virtue. That's what they did. And some of them are really powerful. Some of them are just to keep you from having to choose defaults, like the availability groups one. The availability groups one is an easy one to illustrate, in that these are really all about defaults. It's because they say default in them. They just want you to know that they have your back as far as the number of parameters it takes to create them. There's advice I'd give you to never trust a default per se unless you have them in here as defaults. But if you trust a default and somebody decides to make a breaking change, which they shouldn't, but they could, the maintainers and developers there at DBATools should catch it when they see it come through. But if they don't, sometimes having the default either in a splat or using the defaults that they have here in availability groups lets you control the narrative of what you actually are going to get or what you're going to actually see, and that's helpful. So the other fun ones, commands here, get DBA reg server, these two actually give you the command that you'd use them with, that uses these. Default CMS and include local are use a default central management server, so that's kind of helpful. There is no value because it's a string and you can point it to a default CMS. So if you have a CMS in your environment, and that stands for central management server, not content management system, but if you have a central management server in your environment, having that default CMS really does pay back. It's kind of nice because you can just get that DBA reg server and you know what it is on your environment and you just get it back. So it's really handy. The rest of them are, as you can see, Booleans here, and then int64, and then total milliseconds is the time span type. So you could say something different here. But again, make sure you know what valid values are, because again, if you try to put something in there it doesn't make sense, and that's not going to have a problem. The validation should actually make sure that you only have so many words you can use, right? If you're curious, we'll pull one more time. We'll grab this commands. We'll go back into here, and we'll do this. Why did it not do that? Let's do it again. Copy and paste. So if we ran this again, we would see that there is a validation. Validation should tell us a little bit about this, but basically, when passing random objects at write-dba table data, it will convert them to a data table before writing it using convert to data table. This setting controls how time span objects are converted. So basically you get total milliseconds, which is great. And it doesn't look like, let's see, should work for almost anybody, not a string, is an empty string, is an object with no proper representation, and that's it. So there really isn't a validation as far as what you can or can't pass in here, which, you know, you could decide that that's good or bad. But anyway, that's what you do, is you can consult your validation to see if there is a thing that it's going to hit you with to where you can't use it. All right, let's go back. All right. So let's go back up to commands. So commands is a nice one. It's helpful, but it has quite a few. Resolve DBA network name, bypass. Initialize cred SSP, bypass. Write-DBA table data, look, you can see that's most of them. Ignore nulls, raw, size type, and time span type. So that's helpful there. Computer management, all about computer management here. Bad connection timeout, disable all for cache. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to bed way too late last night. Disable CIM, DCOM, RM, PowerShell remoting, WMI. So if you want to disable all of those so they can't be used, then you could do that and set these. Again, a lot of this is going to be fun testing, really. That's what it's going to be about, is finding out what you would use and what you wouldn't use. But this is just to illustrate what you can and can't do. I'm going to show you how you use them in a minute. so that you can actually use them. Batch separator defaults to Go, which we know as Management Studio users that Go is the batch separator. Here's your date. If you don't like that, to have day and then month in May, or JUN, JUL, that's what this does. So you get your day in two date format. You get your space, and then you get 3 characters of your month, and then you get 4 digits for your year. If you don't like that, hey, change it. Things will do formatting differently when it pulls the formatting out and shoves you some data. This is another one, YYY, then 2 M's. Capitalized means that it's the 05, the 07, the 12. And then small dd is like this one. Small y's are that one. And then HH in capitals is 24-hour clock. If you do HH small, then you're going to get AM, PM. And then your minutes and your seconds, your milliseconds. So this is the default date time instead of just dates. And then you can disable the custom date time. You can disable the custom time span. Digits 2, style dynamic. Here's your time, HHMMSS, so no milliseconds. And then your U format. It's a U format style. I don't ever use that, but it is one of those formatting styles it can use. Import. Serial import, SQL PS check. Ooh, there we go. Import module, right? So if I import, do I check to see if I'm importing the module using dot sourcing? Interesting. And then it says SQL PS check. Do you want it to check to see if SQL Server or SQL PS has been loaded before DBATools and warn you? Sometimes you just say false and then you won't see that warning. Doesn't mean it's good. Just means that you won't get warned. And then strict security mode, your choice. Yeah, I know. The HH and HH, capital HH and small, I don't get them mixed up anymore because I usually use them a lot in PowerShell in formatting dates for transcript names. So I've really got it honed in my brain that it's capital HH and capital MM. 2 MMs mean digits, and 3 MMs means that it's the actual word. And so yeah, you have to use them a lot, right? And then SQL Dev DBA is calling out a great problem that people have is annoyance. You can get annoyed really fast to see warnings you don't want to see, or to see or to format it incorrectly and go, wait, what? Like it's supposed to be 1400. Well, no, you get 02 back with two small h's. So you get it, and I use it enough that I now have it burned in my my brain. I don't get to change that. Logging, that's another big one in DBATools is logging. Same for format and format message in MS SQL. Yeah. Formatting in T-SQL, I don't have down. Sorry, it is a .NET-ism per se, but yeah, you're right. It's one of those things where I haven't quite used that enough in T-SQL, but I've used it in PowerShell enough, so I'm good there. But yeah, T-SQL, nah, not so much yet. But a lot of logging things, right? Max log file age, stuff like that. So it's kind of nice to have those things. The messages. This one's probably the most prolific just because messages come out. So when writing text with developer specific, the color to use when emphasizing write text to the screen, you can really hone in on these guys to set them and have a party. Really. Paths are the ones that are probably the most important in my opinion. Most often it goes to your app data or your documents folder, and that's fine. But you know what? When I'm doing a PowerShell or PowerShell automation, I don't really like to use my profile stuff in my user /benm/ whatever. I'm not necessarily a fan of using my app data for things like that. I might for the temporary data and stuff like that, but logs and debugging stuff, and I got to go dumpster dive into app data, nah, it's not really my favorite fun. But at least you'll know where they put them because the value does specify where the default is. So that's kind of handy. SQL Dev DBA says, Eric Darling says, for each index name he remembers, he forgets someone's birthday. yeah, yeah, let's not go there. Birthdays are important, way more important than some silly index name and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not a fan of these special folders, but because they're called out to be managed, local app data, stuff and app data, STEMs, I get it. Log path is one that I do not agree with putting there. I would rather actually have a place on my automation box, on my jump box, on whatever I'm using. I want to set some of these up for me. And app data is not the place I would put them for me. App data is great when you want a separate place that's already created and meant to do that. You know what? But right now I think we're going to end that there and then teach you one last thing. So the last thing is the set-DBATools Config piece, where you can pass this through to set is the one command where you can set the values, but if you want them to persist, register-DBATools Config. Register-DBATools Config is your friend when you want it to persist past this session. So you will use this one to persist it into the registry so that when you come back, those settings are stuck there for you. They don't have to worry about them going away. And then if you want to take them out, you don't want them to register anymore, you can unregister the DBATools config. So that's nice to get that to be your friend. So that will do it for DBATools config. Again, it's not a lot of data, but I wanted you to have a good focused session on DBATools config and how to use it, why we use it, and whether or not it's valuable. You go through these. If you have questions, please put them in PullGab. We can discuss them later. We can actually go back behind the scenes and see how they're used. So let's do that. And at this point, we'll call it a day.